Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I'm Bill.
I'm Linda.
I'm Charles.
I'm Seth.
And I'm Chris.
And we thought we'd kind of have a little fun talking about the sci-fi series Three Body Problem, which has been out for a little while now, and just kind of go over our thoughts and opinions on that. We've all seen it except for Seth. So Seth is going to be our audience member that hasn't seen the show, that can ask questions and probe for answers to see if it's something he'd be interested in seeing.
Well, and have the experience spoiled.
Yes.
Right. There will be spoilers.
There will be spoilers. But Seth is used to that. The nice thing about Seth is he won't remember this discussion tomorrow. So when he watches the series, it'll be all new to him, right?
No, that's not how this works, Bill. I don't know who told you that that's how this works, but they lied to you.
Well, you just haven't met the Santee yet.
Right.
Oh.
Oh.
Makes sense in time.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to turn it over to our master ceremonies for this episode, Chris, who's going to kind of give us a synopsis, and then we'll just kind of jump into the discussion, see where it takes.
So I'll kick us off with this. And so when we talk about the three body problem, this isn't about where we buried the bodies. This isn't about missing bodies or anything like that. So
Something tells me Seth's all disappointed now.
Right? Yeah. So it's not what you might have thought.
I told you on Discord, when you don't make so many bodies at once, just three body problem, that's too many bodies. One body at a time, much easier to move and dispose of.
Right.
Two body problem, that's you just need a three body problem, you got carried away at some point.
Yes.
Well, or interrupted.
Yeah.
If you get interrupted, sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to add to the body count.
It's not wrong.
Wait till this shows up at your trial, Bill.
So, as I said, this isn't the three body problem conversation that we would typically have, and that's not admitting to anything one way or the other.
Right.
The three body problem is a sci-fi Netflix series that's actually been around for quite a while. Not the Netflix show, but the three body story in and of itself. So it's actually written by a Chinese author called Liu Cixin is how it's pronounced. I checked earlier this morning. So he's a Chinese sci-fi author that published a book called The Three Body Problem back in 2008. It was published in English in 2014. There's actually been a few different releases of it. What we're talking about today is the Netflix show, but just so you know, there's a 2015 Chinese film that never got released, apparently, or at least not here. There's also a TV series, a Chinese TV series that was actually pretty well received, released in 2023, so even recent. And then there's also an English Netflix adaptation, which is what we all watched, which is also available today. And so what this story basically covers, or where it starts, is a bunch of scientists around the world are suddenly kind of dropping off like flies. They're committing suicide, and a lot of it revolves around some of their projects that start having strange things happening. The laws of physics aren't being respected. Their instruments are giving values that don't match anything that they have based out of theory today, and everything is just kind of wrong and wonky. And the three-body problem follows a group of 5 very highly intelligent students of science, I'll say, that each in their own way start to experience some of these issues. One of them in particular, her name is Augie, one day starts to see this countdown in her eyes, which Linda showed a picture earlier, and they just see this. It's like an overlay that they see in front of all things. They see it in their wake and when they're sleeping, it's just constantly there. And so the story follows a little bit of Augie and her friends and a detective, D.A. Shi or D.A. Shin, who's been tasked with figuring out what exactly is going on with all these scientists, and where exactly is this investigation going with all these deaths that are going on. These scientists seem to be going crazy. Ultimately, through this story, we come to find out that there are some aliens that have made contact with a few people on our planet, and they are actively trying to sabotage our science, our technology. They're trying to stop us from progressing. They're going to be on Earth in a few hundred years, and their goal is to basically nerf us so that we can't provide any resistance, because we're technologically advancing faster than they probably would like us to. And by the time they get here in a few hundred years, we will be technologically better than them. So the story kind of follows a few individuals, and more than a few, this cult-like group on Earth who's been in contact with these aliens and are actively helping them to help sabotage our technology and I don't want to say murder, but they're definitely interfering with how things happen on Earth. And this one main woman here is actually one of the main leaders, and I want to say she was related to one of the main characters, Jin. But she, the scene here is back in 1966, I think it was, and the Chinese were locking up and murdering scientists or whatever for going against their beliefs and things like that. And she was ultimately too smart to let go, so they brought her into the secret project where they were building these long distance radio wave types of things with these satellites. And she comes up with a unique way to send an extremely long distance telecommunication using a satellite bouncing it off the sun. And ultimately, she does that, and she makes contact with something, the aliens. And what we come to find out while watching the series is one of the aliens responded initially saying, "Hey, I saw this. Please don't respond. You're lucky I intercepted this, because if the others knew, they're going to come to Earth and they're going to take over." And I forgot her name, but the woman who was just up, she ultimately, in her position at the time, had lost faith in humanity. She'd seen her relatives and her family be taken away or killed, she's been enslaved, and so this wasn't,
Yay Wing J.
Yay Wing J?
Yeah.
Okay, so she ultimately has already given up on humanity. And so what you come to find out while watching the three-body problem, they jump between 1966 and the current, and you come to find out this all started with her. She was told by the alien entity that responded not to reply, otherwise they're going to come to you and take over. And she was basically, "Oh, that's fine. We need a big reset here. We need someone else to run humanity, because what I've lived through at this point is worthless. There's no sense in it." So she responds saying, "Please do come to Earth, take it over." And that's kind of what this series is about, is the unraveling and discovery of what this cult is, what they're doing, who they're communicating with, who the aliens are. For me, I thought this was a pretty good series, and the pacing was wonderful in how they went step by step, unfolding the story from the past and the present, and what was going on with the scientists and countdowns and everything like that. So, yeah, but let's jump in and talk a little bit. This is another scene from 1966.
Yeah, I think it should be noted. The beginning when I first watched this, I thought I had grabbed the wrong show.
Yeah,
because it was the Maoist cultural revolution there in '66. That was pretty intense what they were showing, and from the stories,
the Netflix series don't make you think that that's what you should be watching at all.
No, I thought I was watching. I think I might have even stopped it and gone, did I get the wrong movie? And but it was great. I mean, I'm glad they did that. But it's just to make note, you think you're watching a very intense foreign film at first, and
I wonder if that's the only odd placement of putting that, because they could have put that anywhere in the series, maybe, because you don't really get a grasp for what was going on there until the second half.
I haven't verified this, but my understanding is that in the original book that was in the middle.
Okay.
Yep. So they could get it past the Chinese censors. And then in the American versions, at least the American in the American versions, it's moved towards the front.
Yeah. And so I can see where if you just start out and that's where you're at, because after that scene there, they jump to where you probably would have thought, right? It's it starts off with what's his name? I have it here. Saul. The guy who's always high all the time.
Yeah.
Extremely intelligent, but always high. Saul, it was Saul and somebody else that he was working in a secure facility, and
like a collider.
Yeah, Saul and
yeah, he's working at the collider, and his scientist partner, she comes in and she says something very strange to him. And then she exits and basically goes into I don't know what you'd call that room or the collider room, but she goes up to this ledge and basically jumps off it to her death. And that's kind of where it starts, and then it's grief, it's people trying to understand, was she depressed, what happened, what was wrong, all these things. And later on, that's where we come to find that she's had this countdown that she's been seeing, and then they flash to the detective, and he's investigating other scientists that have been that have basically killed themselves and trying to get an understanding of it. And that's where we see one of the cult members, Tatiana or something like that. She shows up and approaches Jin, one of the other main core groups of friends there. Jin is a multidimensional physicist, and she approaches her and basically tells her she should stop making these ultra super strong nanomaterials that she's been doing. Basically invisible to the human eye, but it's very strong material. And she's trying to convince her, hey, you can make that countdown stop. And one of the crazy things that happened is, Jin really wasn't buying it. She didn't really believe into it. So Tatiana tells her, hey, well, tomorrow night at midnight or whatever the time was, look up into the sky, right? Find a clear space and look up at the stars. So Jin brings Saul, and they go and they look at the sky, and they're waiting there that night. And then all of a sudden, it's like someone's flipping a light switch, and all the stars turn out and turn back on, and they turn out and they turn back on. Saul, because he's very intelligent, recognizes this as Morse code, and it's the same code that they're getting from the stars is the countdown timer that Jin was seeing. So, or not Jin, Augie, sorry. Augie is the woman that was making the nanomaterial stuff. So she realizes now this is something definitely very strange going on. They start to investigate it. And then another side story they introduce are these VR glasses, are these VR headsets. This part was really cool, kind of comical to some extent. So Jack, who's their millionaire friend, I forget, was it food he was into, like making snacks or something? I'm trying to remember what made.
Yes, correct.
Of doing all that stuff. So
he won like a lottery, and then he went into the snack business.
Yeah, the snack business or something. So he's got all this money for stuff, but Jin and Jack both at some point in the series received these headsets, and the funny thing about them is when you put it on, you get fully immersed as if you're physically there. Taste, touch, smell, all of it. You're fully there, but you have to be invited, right? So when Jin shares this with Jack the first time, and Jack puts it on, this woman shows up, and she keeps killing. And there's Jin on the left and Jack on the right.
Yeah.
When you're in this VR world, Jack keeps getting murdered over and over again.
Because she's like he appears in this virtual reality simulation, and he's just totally freaked out by how real it is. And all of a sudden he turns around and there's this woman that looks like a modern ninja.
Yep, there she is.
And she just doesn't even say anything. She just pulls out her ninja sword and cuts his head off.
And they feel it. It's like real. So like they take the headset off and he's all like
holding his throat.
And taste the blood that time, So he does that several times until he finally gets.
Why would you putting them back on?
Because he
thinks there's a way to win. He thinks he's just doing something wrong, so he keeps trying.
Yeah, I'm gonna crack the code. Eventually, though, he gets his own headset. He gets the invite, and when he gets the invite, then he's allowed to play the game.
And then he goes in, and then the funny thing is, he goes in because he thinks it's a game. He sees, what is it, Sir Francis Bacon, I think.
Yeah.
And he just punches him in the mouth. He comes up and he's asking for help with something, and he just punches him in the mouth. And Sir Francis Bacon is like, "Ow! Wow!
Yeah.
What the? How dare you assault a noble?" Kind of a thing, But they eventually come to realize that this is based on actual events that have happened in the past, I guess, for this world. So go ahead.
Yeah. So the VR was a way to convey or tell a story of us of what the aliens were going through in their own home world, and maybe a test of knowledge to an extent. So there were multiple levels, and each level had a problem they had to solve. And a lot of them were physics-based or what have you. And if they could solve that problem, then they advanced to the next level. And when they get to the third or fourth level, you start to understand what the core of the problem is, which is a 3-body problem, is that their planet was surrounded by 3 suns that moved in such an erratic manner. It was causing all of these problems on their own planet, with the atmosphere, with the weather, with massive droughts or extreme cold storms that would turn everybody to ice and you'd shatter. It was just really extreme. And so as Jin and Jack go through the VR game and they're trying to solve these problems, when they get to the last one, I think it was Jin who came to the conclusion that you can't solve this problem.
Right.
It's not something that can be fixed. Well, and go ahead, Bill.
I just like to make a note. That scene, just when they do the army computer chip.
Yeah.
So it just was spine tingling for me. I don't know. It wasn't something I saw coming, but I remember that was the moment in the series where I went, "Oh boy, this is a real good series."
Yeah. So there's the scene Charles is talking about is in this last level here. The dynasty that they're in. He has all of his soldiers. I don't know, millions of them, Charles.
I think so. Yeah.
Out there, and they represent basically a fundamental logical processing unit, right? A computer, and they flip one way or the other based off of ones and zeros, right? And so they're a live person calculator, essentially.
Right. They're holding a card, right? White or black or red or whatever.
Yeah.
And then as the calculations are going, they're flipping based on what,
I
the
think
guy
it
next to them's doing. And
it was supposed to represent, it was like Genghis Khan's, because it was Earth-based kind of.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was Genghis Khan's army.
Yeah.
It was wild though, Charles. You're right. Like I had not ever seen it portrayed in that manner, and it was just kind of bizarre. But the thing is that world ended in the same way, even though they were out there calculating it. And I think that's where the conclusion comes.
This was an amazing. Can I bring you back? What we missed? The neutrino room in the beginning. I just like to point out that's a real where she kills herself.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
It's like the Cherenkov tank, but it's a real thing where a lot of the science is awfully close to. If you're paying attention to science documentaries, or whatever.
Yeah, because I think that's a facility where they're trying to detect neutrinos.
They are, yeah. And so they have the faster than light problem, and if you look into it and all that, and I mean in real life, right?
But she kills herself by throwing herself into that Cherenkov tank.
Yeah. But if you haven't been paying attention to stuff, you might think because it looks Star Trek-y.
Yeah,
it's what the neutrino tank looks like. I mean, it looks. Yeah, it's an odd looking tank. Anyway, that was it.
Linda can find a picture of it, but yeah, that would certainly be a problem if you fall into the Cherenkov tank. Not only for future experiments, I guess at that point though it didn't matter because they were all
they were closing the tank in the story. So
yeah,
can you imagine the janitorial job for that to clean it up?
Jesus. That'd be tough.
Like, this is not on my job description, guys.
Right.
It'd be wild. So, And
I thought, Chris, when they're in the simulation, the first reveal there of how these Santi survive these disastrous sun cycles where, it pretty much wipes out all life. So in the first one we see, the three suns are manifesting themselves, and it's basically frying their world. And the only way you can survive is like being inside of a big, thick walled castle kind of a thing. But everybody else, if you're outside, I think you can hide in a really dark shadow maybe and make it right. But
I mean, you're stuck there, right?
Yeah. And what we see is this group of three people, and one of them's just a little girl. And it's one of our characters from the film. I think it's Jin, right? It's Jin.
Jin, yeah.
And the guy she met there that's supposedly this super smart wizard that has the answer to predicting the sun cycles, supposedly. And then this little girl that's following them along. Well, so they get to this area and all of a sudden the three suns come up, and Jin and this wizard guy hide in the shadow, but there's not enough room for the little girl. And so he says, you've got to get out of the shadow. You've got to go out there. And Jin says, well, no, she'll die. And he said, no, she'll be all right. And so she just goes out there and lays down in the full sun, and it just desiccates her. Sort of like, how a tardigrade can desiccate but still be alive. And, you add water and later they come back. Well, that's what happens to their people.
Basically dehydrates.
Right. They dehydrate. But then, so they've got these huge buildings where all these dehydrated skin sacs are stored in rolls. And so the ruler of the planet's trying to figure out the right time to thaw them out. And he doesn't want to thaw them out too soon, because if they do and the winter cycle comes, they'll all end up freezing to death. So that's what they're trying to figure out, a way to accurately predict the sun cycle, because when the disaster happens, basically if they rehydrate too soon, their civilization gets destroyed and they have to start from scratch.
Right.
And so that's why it takes them so long for their science to advance, where ours has advanced so dramatically in 200 years, right?
You're doing hundreds of years, what's taken them thousands.
10,000 years to do the same amount of advance that we did in 200. So that was a pretty cool scene when that happened. And then of course this guy that she's with, this supposed wizard, I can't remember what his system was. It was kind of like tarot cards or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And So he says, yeah, I can predict the sun. And she's trying to tell the leader that, no, this is just pseudoscience. This is not real. You can't go by this. But the king doesn't believe her. So he has all the citizens rehydrated and everybody's up and running around. And it's just happy time. And everybody's running around naked because their skin sacks get thrown into a pool. And then they come out of the shallow end and they're all running around naked.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, the suns get whipped around because they get to a certain point in their gravitational orbit where they all eject each other out, and the planet goes into a deep freeze within seconds, and everybody freezes to death. And she goes over and she sees that girl, and she tries to save the girl because she's screaming for her at the last second, says she's starting to freeze. She finally reaches her, but she's already frozen solid, and she grabs her hand and it just snaps off and she shatters to bits. And so that was an example where the entire species gets wiped out and has to start from scratch again. So yeah, it was very interesting the way it was all portrayed. But go ahead.
Yeah. And so as the story progresses, as we mentioned, you get the VR headsets.
And those are fucking cool headsets, by the way.
They are. It's like the future. You know, Apple's just going to pivot and probably make their next Vision Pro that.
Right.
As we go through the VR headsets, we start to learn more about the species and the challenges they're dealing with. That's when we come to find out that the aliens are on their way, and the cult leader guy, he makes a very grave mistake. So there's a scene where he's on this big boat traveling, and it's where he keeps all of his cult members, and he's reading a story, Little Red Riding Hood or something like that, to the aliens, and so the aliens like to listen to us and understand our history and stuff like that. So he's telling them tales, and in the story, though, he has to convey to the aliens that we're capable of lying.
Yeah, because he's telling them the story of Little Red Riding Hood, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is where things take a dark turn, and he's trying to explain the concept of not telling the truth. This is a concept that's actually not familiar to the aliens. They're not used to deception, which has some contradictions here, which blows my mind. So they're not used to lying or deception or anything like that. So the aliens make a decision that they're going to stop communicating with this cult leader because he can't be trusted either. These humans that are capable of lying, we can't trust them.
Right.
And so then they pivot. And the aliens basically take a new stance of, we're not just going to come take over anything. We need to annihilate you. We can't coexist with you. We're going to war with you. Now, what I don't get is the aliens were coming anyways. They were already interfering with our science and everything like that. And you're doing it kind of a scummy, hidden nature. So to me, they're already capable of these things. And it was just a weird kind of reason for them to go into war as opposed to any other disagreement, because we lie. And I feel like, well, the aliens are we come to find out that they sent these spherical orb things that help them communicate in real time between where they're at and they're traveling, because obviously communication takes thousands or hundreds of thousands of years to traverse where they're at. So they created these.
They call them sophons, but they're entangled protons, right?
Yeah. So and this again is kind of weird to me in terms of, you have all this technology advanced stuff, and you can't solve your own problems, so you're going to come to Earth instead. But
well, I think they were the plan to come to Earth was to find a new home.
Mm-hmm.
Because theirs was.
They had to travel 400 years away to find that. It's kind of.
Yeah, like, why come to a planet that's got people on it when, like, any other planet would be an upgrade with whatever technology you have to throw at that planet? Like, seems easier. Also, my cats know how to lie. Dogs know how to lie. That's not a great sci-fi reason to suddenly go, nah, they know how to tell the not truth.
No, it solved a lot of problems. No, I could see it if you were tied to it, because that's the problem with like if you got circuitry. They don't say they have circuitry, but if you're tied to each other, if we're all in the VR headset and we can all read each other's thoughts, line's going to disappear. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
And if they're more advanced, that's what's going to happen. They're going to forget about it, that it even existed.
Yeah.
That made sense to me. And it solved a lot of problems. Like they keep telling us what their plans are.
Yeah. The only thing that struck me as a little bit unrealistic was that we first made contact with him in 1966. By 1977, we've got near instantaneous constant communication with them.
Yep.
But it's not until 2024 that they learn that we can lie.
Yeah.
Well,
When you said they liked listening to human stories and whatnot, how did it take that long to get to?
I don't know.
You guys can lie,
right? And I get where that's where they wanted to draw the pivot. I just felt like there could have been a better way to have them change on us. Like over time, we've gotten more of we've become warmongers, right? We've become these other things, and they're like, well, we don't trust you given what your military does, your other world wars. They're like, not getting any better. Huh?
They're coming to take over.
Yeah. And so I don't understand the whole like where lying is where it draws a line, and they pick up a nuance from the Little Red Riding Hood, and that's where they draw the line, right? That's where they're like, nope, we can't do this. We're gonna go to war. But I
can see it.
Little Red Riding Hood?
Yeah,
that's what
the wolf is saying that you know that he's the grandmother or whatever, and the story.
But I can see it because you could read if he was sitting there reading them, you know, War and Peace and history books and
yeah, and we don't know everything he was reading, but
you don't get around to like he was just reading them Little Red Riding Hood because they now have a daycare center on the boat.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's his last book he picked, and that's the one where they're going, wait a second, there's a wolf.
Yeah.
Wait a second, you guys had predators on your planet?
Well, the wolf's lying. Yeah, no, I get it. To me, that was
like, okay, we went through the unit on World Wars 1 and 2 with you guys. You helped start at least one of those. Probably.
Well, they understood we were warring creatures, but I think so are they. It's just they didn't. But the lying part, that was they didn't know how to deal with it. Yeah.
So they kind of just cut the ship to shreds.
Leave that up. So on this boat we were talking about, where I think his name was Mike, was the kind of the cult leader that was conversing with the aliens. I wasn't 100% sure whether this was why the aliens wanted Augie to stop making the nanomaterials that she was, but like all good things that we come to create, we have to find a way to weaponize them. And so the military steps in because they're also, again, they have a vested interest in getting to the bottom of what this cult is doing. They know it's dangerous and it's something to do with all the weird science stuff. So they build this mechanism to take strands of this nanofiber, which can't be seen but is extremely strong and cuts through anything, and they build these pillars that come up like this, and across it are the nanofibers. And so they basically ambush this cult and their boat, and children and adults and everybody on it are basically sacrificed for the greater good. As the ship's going down this river and they set this trap for it, the boat goes through these.
It's like running them through a cheese grater, not a cheese grater, but one of those egg slicers.
Yep, and so it kills everybody on board, men, women, and child.
And it was pretty graphic. I mean, you're watching them just getting sliced into pieces, and the body parts are falling, and the organs are falling out, and
it was awful. They tried not to show like a ton of the kids, but the reality was like there was a whole families in there.
No, it showed the kids. You have to rewatch it. It showed them doing the badminton tournament.
Oh my God, that's right.
Oh,
right into the guard. It takes out a that's right. Pretty upsetting.
So it's that scene from Resident Evil dialed up to 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and that cult leader, Mike Evans, was such an asshole because he runs down the corridor with this, he can see the ship falling apart behind him,
Leaves them
right?
all, no
Runs
warning.
down the corridor, runs into the server room and grabs the hard drive that has all the recordings of the Santee that they've saved. And so he's trying to save the hard drive and he runs out with it. And the guy who's like the IT guy comes out and he's like, "What's going on?" And Mike Evans just turns around and watches the fibers come and just shred him to pieces.
Yeah.
He doesn't warn him. He doesn't say, "Come with me" or anything.
Now, mind you, Mike didn't get away either.
No.
He got his in the end. Now, what I didn't get is they could have just as easily destroyed that drive doing this.
Yes. Right.
And so they could have gotten, I think that was the ultimate goal, was to get it. And so I would have rather, the whole operation would have been less messy had they just gone through with sending a bunch of guys onto the boat.
Yeah.
You would have had less loss of life.
Right.
No,
Potentially. Well, potentially. But if you're going to kill them all anyways, you might as well send men on board. And if they're any resistance, you kill them because you were going to kill them all anyways. But you probably could have saved the children.
I think they were trying to avoid. I don't know if I buy that this would have avoided it, but I think they were trying to avoid the self-destruct button.
Yeah, that destroyed the hard drive, completely erased it. They were
hoping
that. I think the rest of it was just a calculated risk that the hard drive, as small as it was.
Risk.
Yeah, fibers at 3 feet on center aren't going to probably destroy the hard drive.
No,
right.
Right. And the other thing too is, even if it did, it's a nano cut through the hard drive. I bet they could piece that back together and still get data off of it.
I mean, they were lucky they found it to begin with.
I know, right? So I mean, in that entire wreckage, they find the one guy who's like in pieces.
That was right. Well, but they always find the black box in an airplane,
But it's beaconing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So they can always track that down. But we're talking like, again, putting it through a cheese grater or like, just total destruction. So anyways, that happens, and that's where the big pivot happens. And the Sophons, is that what you call them, Bill?
Yeah. The Sophons.
Yeah. So those were these two supercomputers that were digitally compressed, and they were basically enabling the aliens to spy on everything that was going on Earth.
And that was kind of unique, the way they presented how they did that. So, they talked about the fact that there are many more dimensions than we see, more than the 3 dimensions, and that protons only appear so small to us because we don't see their other dimensions that they exist in. And so they're able to access those other dimensions and unfold the proton. And when they do that, the proton becomes world-sized. And so what they did is they created these, they unfolded these protons, 4 of them. They set up 2 pairs, and each pair is quantum entangled. And then because the proton was planet-sized, they could basically go and write a circuit board on them and create a world-sized supercomputer in each of these protons. And then they shrunk them back down to their original size. 2 of them flew back to the Santee, and the other 2 went to Earth. And they're currently following this supercomputer program to monitor everything that happens on the planet and report it in real time back to the Santee.
Yeah. And so that's where, if you recall earlier in the conversation, I mentioned about the lights being flipped on and off on the stars and stuff like that. That's what gave them that total control over kind of the planet and the visibility of things. And any conversation you're having, like the one we're having right now, they can listen in on. It's what was also messing with all the physics instruments. All of those things were these Sophons we come to figure out that have been on the planet. And so when they pivot towards war, they basically reveal themselves to the planet and to everybody on there and put out this mass communication that says like, hey, we're coming and we're gonna kill everybody and shut this shit
You
down.
are bugs.
Yeah, you are bugged. That's what it was. Yeah, just basically this big message that says you are bugs. And so I was like, damn, that
Which is-
escalated quickly.
Which is kind of funny because that concept of being bugs was what Mike Evans told them.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
so,
but like they're worried about our science catching up to theirs by the time they get here. Has that
Yeah.
already been?
and so that was the thing is, if they didn't interfere now, we still would have advanced further than they did by the time they got here. Our pace of technological advancement was just too fast for them.
So they have achieved their goal and slowed us down, and now they're here.
they're not
No,
here yet.
they're not here
They're
yet.
400 years away.
Oh, so they're still trying to slow us down. They haven't succeeded, but they did just come out and say, "Hey, we're out here, and we're gonna come and kill you."
Yeah.
So,
But counterproductive to what they wanted.
well, yes and no. So here's the problem, though. They can see and hear everything that we do, and they can interfere with what we're doing. And so what ultimately ends up happening is the intelligence agencies have to formulate a plan of how do we advance and move things forward while keeping things a secret. How do we not let them know what our plans are? And so they designate.
They realize, first of all, that while they can see and hear everything, they can't read our minds.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So they figure out what they need to do is they need to identify 3 people on the planet that are going to be what they call wall facers. And these 3 people will come up with a plan, each on their own, not talking to the other wall facers. They will come up with their own plan as to how to defeat the aliens that are arriving. And so one of the guys is a major general strategist. I can't remember
Military.
military. Yeah. What was the other one? I know the last one was our guy.
Saul. The last one was Saul, the guy who never really wanted any responsibility on the physics side.
Right, he's kind of the drug addict, but he's really intelligent.
He's extremely intelligent, though.
The middle one was a woman scientist of some
Yeah,
kind.
I'm trying to remember what her role was.
Yeah, I can't remember what her expertise was.
She's like
but,
a weapons inventor or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the way Saul gets picked is that he has a sexual liaison with some woman, and he's really just into one night stands. He doesn't have any commitments, it's all just for the momentary pleasure for him. And so he's saying goodbye to her the next day, and he gets hit by a person on a skateboard and knocked out of the way of a car that is unmanned. It's one of those autonomous vehicles, but it's been reprogrammed to kill him. And so the police realize that it's the Santee trying to take him out because they realize he's a threat for some reason. And the reason he's a threat is because the woman Yi, who originally contacted the Santee and invited them to come to Earth and take over, when she realizes that the Santee have abandoned her and that now they're coming to wipe us out, she meets him in a cemetery, I think, or a park.
Yeah.
And she proceeds to explain to them, to Saul, how she tells him a joke.
It's a joke. It's a brilliant joke.
It's about Einstein getting to heaven, and Einstein wants to play his violin. And they say, no, you can't play your violin here. God won't allow it. And he's like, well, I'm going to play
the saxophone. It's a brilliant joke. And God's playing the A Train.
Yeah.
And if you take that joke apart, I've never. Well, anyway, I'm sorry, but because it was just like, because go on.
Okay. Well, anyway, so Einstein hears God starting to play the A Train. And so Einstein grabs his violin and figures he's going to play anyway. So he joins in. Well, as soon as he starts playing, God shows up, grabs his violin, and smashes it to shreds. And he walks off. The angels come to Einstein and they say, we told you not to play with God. And he said, well, I just don't understand why he did that. And they said, well, because God's a saxophonist. So it's kind of a weird joke, but her point is that jokes are very personal. And sometimes a joke will only have relevance and meaning to two people, and it won't mean anything to anybody else. And so her unstated message there is that jokes, human jokes, will be relevant to humanity, and the Santee won't get it. And so while it doesn't come out, the show doesn't come out and say it exactly, my thought is that that's the way we can communicate with each other, is through humor that the Santee won't understand. Even if they hear the joke, they won't understand the significance of it or what's really going on. And so the Santee realize that that's the case, and that's why they try to kill Saul. And so the government doesn't realize why they tried to kill him or what the significance of Saul is. They just know that he must be important if the Santee want him dead. So reluctantly, he becomes a wall facer. And the fun thing about being a wall facer is anything you want, you just say it, and it happens.
Yeah, the world has committed at this point globally to the wall facers. So
yeah.
So if I can throw what I think are interesting about the joke.
Yeah.
Because when you start to tear, because she told him, no, it's not just that you communicate through jokes. I think she communicated the what she thinks is the way to defeat our aliens.
Yeah.
And so within the joke, so the A train is it's an old it's Ella Fitzgerald and no, I can't think. Well, anyway, it's an old jazz standard about directions on how to get to Harlem,
right,
for jazz players. So she's letting them know there's directions in here, and if you right before she tells them the joke, she had now I'm forgetting the books, but she had a couple of books that she'd been reading, and so I think she's communicating the within the joke, there's God and there's angels and there's the heavens and there's stuff going on. And I think she's communicating that he's supposed to be quiet. So she's communicating the dark forest phenomena, which is that there's probably the whole thing's based on, there's other life out there, but everybody's being quiet, which is how it starts, right? They go, don't send out another message.
Yeah.
And I think she's communicating, I could be wrong, but I think she's communicating, hey, send out another message because we can attract the other aliens that way. And they're going to come kick them in the balls.
Well, we also know that not all of those aliens were on the same page, because the first one that did respond to her warned her not to reply.
Right. So he's communicating or she was the actual way to defeat them, as well as you communicate through jokes. And it's such a brilliant moment. I don't even know. Anyway.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, because if they do that, they could use that same technique that she used, right, to send out sort of a plea for help message and see who comes answers it.
Just bounce it off the sun. It'll travel a million light years faster.
Somebody else will answer next time. Yeah.
Maybe somebody worse.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe someone worse.
Could be.
So basically, they can it's actually useful that today's generation can communicate basically through memes.
Yes.
Yes.
GIF.
Because that unsaid underlying tones just aren't. They're very literal in nature, right?
Yeah.
So the untold things that you and I can do, where we send gifts or whatever back and forth to each other to say a complete communication thread, that's lost on them.
You know what it made me think of, Chris? Remember the Star Trek TNG episode with the Temerians?
I was looking that up, actually.
Yeah.
The Temerians, Darmok and Jalad.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Where they're saying, the River Tamak, and they talk in allegories, or basically everything they
Shaka,
say is
when the walls
related.
fell.
What's that, Linda?
Shaka, when the walls fell.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So everything is related to an event that happened, and that's how they communicate ideas. And so the Enterprise crew isn't able to talk to them for most of the show because they don't understand. They understand the words they're using, but they don't have any context for the stories.
Yeah.
And so they don't know the meaning. And so that was my thought when I was hearing that. I was like, oh, it's just like that Star Trek story where if you talk in stuff that's only relevant to your species, they're not going to understand the reference.
Mhm.
And I'm just thinking about the top alien scientist who was just that one guy in a meeting one time who was Captain America going, I got that reference.
Yeah.
And I'm like, promote him.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things they're trying is they want to try to, I think, convince the Santi that we're not dangerous. And so to do that, they decide to send them a human brain.
That's right.
Which unfortunately is one of the 5 friends that we've
That poor
covered.
guy. He's
Yeah.
supposed to hell.
So
But in all seriousness, he's got terminal cancer.
yeah, so Will, I think this one was Will. What Bill just said, Will was sick. Will was dying anyways, and I believe Will even came into a large sum of money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
when
Jack
died.
Yeah. So when Jack died, Jack left all. Jack didn't just die. Jack was murdered. By the way, by one of the cult members.
Tatiana working for the Santi.
Yeah. So Jack gets murdered by Tatiana, and Jack leaves his wealth to Will. Will is dying, and Will decides that he'll be part of this experiment
For love.
For love, because
Just
Jack's
make it
got
even more torturous. Yeah.
Yeah, Jack's got a thing. Was it Jack has a thing for Jin? Was it? Or Augie? I think it was Jin. So his last act was to buy. What was the thing with the stars? They were selling.
Oh, he bought
yeah.
her. He bought her for the stars. Yeah.
Yeah, you can name a star after someone you love for a lot of money, and the money went to the world effort to defeat the Santi.
Yeah, and so he buys Jin a star and then donates his brain. And what they did was they found a way to put it to
freeze it,
to put it into cryostasis, right? So they figured that out, and they tested on a monkey or a chimpanzee or something like that, and proved that it works. And so they're like, yeah, we're going to put this in the cryostasis, and we're going to develop this rocket. We're going to send it out there as kind of a goodwill thing or whatever. We're going to put them on a rocket and send them out into space. So they go to do that, and there's this big rush to build these solar sails that are propelled using nuclear explosion. So they have to set up this timing. There's all this math that has to be done.
Well, and built out of nanofiber, I believe.
Yeah, built out of Augie's special nanofibers that she developed. And so they build all this stuff, and I think it ends up being what we believe, anyways, a failure as it gets off course at some point. One of the sails snaps and throws it off course. So we believe at this time, anyways, when we get to this part of the series, that it may have been a failure.
And Augie's just lost in space, essentially.
Yeah.
Will.
Just a brain.
Or Will. Sorry, Will.
Yeah.
So
Will's got a brain in cryostasis flying across space to God knows where.
Right.
He's on a journey.
A lot happens on this show.
Yeah.
A lot happens.
But it was good. It was very well put together.
Yeah, I thought so too. It was really good storytelling, a lot of creativity there, and how the story was told, and how you come to realize what's going on with the Santi and their worlds. And the whole three body problem concept of the story is really creative, I think, and very engaging. All the actors in it are really good.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of the actors in there. Jack, who was Sam in Game of Thrones.
Yep.
And the guy who plays
the intelligence leader guy, he was also in Game of Thrones.
Right.
Oh, he was. Yeah. Well, Tatiana was from Westworld, right?
His character's name is
so.
Thomas Wade. It's Liam Cunningham.
Yep, there we go.
Known for playing Davos Seaworth in the HBO series Game of Thrones.
He has an integral part in this. He's kind of the guy in charge of all the secret operations going on and stuff like that in Three Body.
Yeah.
He's D.A. Shin's boss, and Shin is the one of the monk guys in the Marvel series.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's got a really good cast. I mean, everybody's just phenomenal, I think, in the show. So it's really engaging, and you really identify with the different characters and what they've got going on, and so the woman that played Yi, the old when she's in modern times, it's actually played by Keiko O'Brien from Star Trek.
I'm sure she has a real name.
Yeah, she does, and
I can't keep them all straight.
I know it, but I can't for the life of me.
Rosalind Chow, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thanks, Charles. Yeah. So anyway, everybody that's seen it, would you give it 2 thumbs up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yes, I think this is an absolute have to watch.
Yeah.
How many episodes?
8.
8 long episodes, but 8 very good episodes.
Yeah.
And it keeps ratcheting up, so you don't. A couple of people, the first 2 episodes, I thought it might be a little too depressing.
Mhm.
It is. Dead scientists and depression. You're not wrong.
Without the when you get to that 3rd episode, then all of a sudden, I mean, it's still depressing, but it's
more suspense thriller when by the time you get to the 3rd one.
Yeah.
There's not
more
much
thrilling.
suspense, just sad.
Right.
Because it's just like cultural
Here-
revolution where people are killing their teachers, followed by suicides, and you're like, oh my god, I don't know if I can do this.
So here's the question, though: if I watch this, is it going to get Netflixed? Like, no.
They've already approved the 2nd season, so
Yeah.
I don't think it matters though, because it's an interesting. The ending, whatever the next adventure is, it's going to be a different. I think it has to be a different tone.
yeah.
Just because the solution to giving him unlimited resources, right?
Yeah.
That's a different.
Well, and not only that, they
a plot
allude to time jumps going forward too, potentially because of the cryostasis having
Sure.
that it would be the same people leading the efforts until it's done. So regardless of whether 200 or 300 years pass,
Yeah.
presumably they would just go into cryostasis for a bit, come up to check in on the plans, and then go back into cryostasis. So
Right.
we'll see how that plays out.
Maybe
We don't
hit a
need to dive
soccer
into
game
that.
or 2, and
Yep.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, even if they didn't do a 2nd season, it's still worth watching the first one.
yeah.
I wouldn't feel like if it ended now that I'd been cheated out of the.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Well,
That's good.
a couple other. Let me just, because we need to. I just think it needs to be thrown out. There was the in real life, right? There's the murders between the Chinese, one of the Chinese. Well, the guy. There was a rich Chinese guy that was really supporting this whole thing, right? And then there was some sort of director, producer, who poisoned him to death.
Oh, you're talking about in real life, yeah.
In real life, yeah, I'm saying real life.
Yeah, so the guy that bought all the rights and, worked with Netflix to get them the rights to design the series. He was poisoned to death by his associate.
Yep,
His
it's
nemesis.
a real life thriller in the story of how this came to be.
And that guy that poisoned him is now imprisoned in China for
Just recently
That's-
done.
yeah.
It wasn't like years ago. This was like recent.
yeah. So he's currently in prison for the murder of the one guy, and he also ended up poisoning a number of other colleagues that he was disgruntled with.
Jeez.
And the weird thing, the guy set up this basement laboratory in his house to develop the poison that he used, and they said it was like something out of Breaking Bad. This guy's basement poison laboratory, and the Chinese really didn't figure out what poison combination he used, and he won't tell them. And fortunately, the ones that survived, I guess, didn't get enough of it to kill them, but his boss did. So,
God.
yeah,
It's wild.
it is wild. All right, well, we're kind of overtime here a little bit. Well,
All right.
more than a little bit, I guess.
It was good. It was good.
Yeah,
We
but
have
it's good, and it's really hard to sum up
deep.
all the twists and turns, even in
Well,
an hour of the 8-episode series. So,
And in episode
Definitely.
7, when that joke happened, pay attention to the joke.
yeah,
That's
right.
It's everything. It's quite
It's
an
going to
amazing.
hinge on that, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely encourage you to see it. If you've already seen it, let us know in the comments what you think, and we will definitely catch y'all next time. So, thanks. Have a great week, and we'll see you later, all. Bye-bye.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.